It is time. Hey y'all! Welcome to another video of My Creative Life with Kel Sweetie, where we read books, where we thrift, where we do art, where we do crafts, DIYs, and we love the holidays. Today, we are talking about spooky season. And not just spooky season, but fall season period. For some of us, for most of us, that starts when Starbucks puts out their pumpkin spice. I think that's like the 1st of September or something. I don't know. For me, I officially am like, it's fall. September 1st. I don't care how hot it is. It's September 1st. I'm calling it fall. I'm calling it right now. Because by the time it gets to November, it's Christmas. This is how my mind works. This is my calendar. September, October, that's fall. November, December, we're in winter. January, who cares about it? So with that being said, I want to be able to give you all of your fall girl, spooky girl, Halloweenie girl recs this year so that you know the best way to spend your season. So let's get into it. So, it is almost fall for some of y'all. And for some of us, we're finally just getting the ball rolling. I've been doing spooky season stuff probably since the 1st of September. Even though it's been 90 degrees, I'm gonna tell you right now, I am burning up in this head wrap and this sweater and the coffee and everything. But I am gonna will it to be fall, no matter how hard it takes. And, you know, the aesthetics. As you can see, I've even got my, like, burning fire here, as well as you can see some of my setup from the Halloween Decorate With Me video that is posted. It's all vibes. I even got my little knockoff spooky pillow, pumpkin pillow. Target had these, like, knockoff Pottery Barn pillows for, like, $10 this year. And he's so cute. Look at him. So he's here with me. I'm not holding him because it's far too hot right now. But he's here in spirit. Today, we are going to be covering what I recommend for your spooky season, for your fall season, for your Halloween season needs. Movies, shows, and books. Activities differ from place to place. So if you're looking for that, go to Darling Desi. That is not this type of video, by the way. Her work is incredible and is cozy and is, let me romanticize the fall the best way possible. I cannot give you that with what I have. I can only give you what I got. So I can give you fantastic recommendations, and that's what I plan to do today. I think there are 3 different fall people. There are cozy fall people who are like, give me like a warm cup of tea or coffee and curl up with a book and leaves are falling and the color orange and basically the embodiment of what's happening back here. That's cozy fall. That's cozy fall people. Then there are spooky fall people. And spooky fall people are like, it's fall, that means it's Halloween. Bring out the horror films, bring out the slasher flicks. We're going on a haunted hayride. That is spooky, scary people. If you take cozy fall people, if you take spooky fall people and you Venn diagram those, in the middle you would get Halloweenie fall people. I just came up with that category because I know who you are, because I am that person. I am Halloweenie fall people. I like a little bit of spooky. Give me a couple of horror films here and there, but nothing too crazy. I still haven't been to horror nights because that just seems like a lot for me. Give me a little bit of Gilmore Girls and coffee in the morning. Let me feel the fall. I think it's because I was born in the Midwest. Those Ohio sensibilities just don't leave you. And so today, I'm going to break down the best way to have all 3 of those seasons this year. Whether you're one of them, whether you're all 3 of them, whether you're 1 or 2 of them. Whatever the case is, I've got what you need in this video today. And we're going to start off with movies, because I feel like everybody just wants recommendation movies sometimes when they watch these. So we're gonna start off with those, work our way into shows, and then we're gonna head over to my library corner and talk about the best books you should read if you want to really fall into fall. That's really great, isn't it? So one of the first films that we're starting off with is The Craft. I feel like it's easy spooky. Like, it's definitely spooky, but like softcore. You want to wear what they wear. You want to be in their little witchy girl group. I mean, until, you know, Nancy goes crazy. But it's a great time. Essentially, 4 teenage girls start to dabble in witchcraft. One of them gets a little too powerful and hungry with power and attacks another one of them because they're teenage girls, and what else are they going to do with all that power but attack one another? And it kind of goes crazy and haywire from there. One of my favorite black witch representation is in here, and that's with Rachel True. She plays Rochelle, which, you know, is the token black character in this film. I want a Rochelle redemption story, and not them just giving us The Craft part 2 or whatever with a predominantly person of color cast. Like, I want Rochelle specifically to have a redemption story. But first up on the list, The Craft. Arguably one of the better of the major Halloween horror films is Scream. It needs more love, regardless of the fact that it's getting tons of sequels nobody asked for. But the first Scream was revolutionary. It just aged well because of the satirical nature of it. Billy and Stu for life. I mean, really, like, a better couple. I mean, horrible, toxic, but a great couple. Ghostface is a killer that goes on the loose killing high schoolers, and the small town of Woodsboro is trying to figure it out. Unfortunately, they're not going to figure it out soon enough before there's a couple of more bodies on the list. Honestly, Scream is one of my favorite films. I think that Wes Craven was just so smart with the way that he put this script together, the way these characters are built out. It's funny, but at the same time, extremely, like, politically on point. Oh, Scream is my next recommendation. Okay, I feel like the recommendations I've given so far have been pretty much, oh, I know about Scream and Ghostface, you know. I know about The Craft. Everybody knows about that. This one I feel like is a sleeper, and that's Sweeney Todd, the Demon of Fleet Street. Keep in mind this is a musical. Now, but don't let that deter you from watching this film. It is a Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, and Snape, I cannot think of his name right now, but Snape's in it. And I think Wormtail's actually in it too. Which, that's a crazy Harry Potter crossover now that I've thought about it. Sweeney Todd is an amazing story about, well, Sweeney Todd, who was a barber, gets incorrectly charged with a murder, is sent off, comes back to London during the plague, actually, and meets Helena Bonham Carter's character, who is in love with him and realizes that he's crazy and murderous. He ends up murdering people in his barbershop, and they're baked into the pies. I could tell you what goes on in this story, and you would still watch it and wonder what the heck is going on. It is vicious, and it's extremely bloody, but the music's actually good, even though it's a musical. I've shown this movie to a bunch of people who would never like a musical, and every single person I've ever showed this movie to absolutely loves it, and that's because it is height spooky vibes. Just give it a watch. It's heartbreaking, it's grisly. When you watch it, you're like, yep, it's Halloween. into the Halloweeny fall section of our movies, I want to start off with Monster House. I feel like there's still too many people who have not watched Monster House. Something that inhibits nothing but fall. Like, even looking at this opening scene, look at these colors. These leaves. It's amazing. Now, I will admit that it is super spooky. An old man who lives across the street from the main character ends up having a heart attack and possibly dying. And they find out that actually his house is alive. And not just alive, but it's alive with the soul of his wife. I'll kind of end it there because I feel like if you watch it, you'll really see like how much of it is like really spooky and how like it's really messed up how the wife's soul gets into the house, to be honest. So that's really the spooky portion, but it's not enough to make you scared, and it's just enough for it to be like, oh, it's definitely Halloween. So Monster House. People need to watch more of Monster House. It is so good, and I don't think that it gets far enough love. The next 3 movies I'm going to recommend, I call them my personal Disney Holy Halloween Trinity. And I say personal because one of them I feel like it's interchangeable depending on what Halloween Disney movie you preferred, but 2 of them are layups. Like, no matter what, they're in your Disney lineup for Halloween. And that first one is Halloween Town. I just don't think it's Halloween unless you've watched like a movie. You've watched Halloween Town. If you've not watched it once, it wasn't Halloween. You didn't do it. Marnie learns that she's actually a witch, and that she, when she turns 16, that she's supposed to find out if she's gonna live in her town, in the normal world, or Halloween Town. And of course, she wants to live in Halloween Town. She ends up figuring it out because she follows her grandma, and some issues with like an evil warlock kind of ensues, and she kind of has to save the day somehow. I mean, I watch it now and I still feel like this definitely holds up. It's still a great film. So if you want some nostalgia of like Halloween during the 90s and everything, this is what you need to be going for. This, maybe a lineup of like Goosebumps or something. It's the right combination. Okay, the next one that I have coming up is one of the movies that I feel like I was saying would be like a hit or miss for some of you, and that's Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. I feel like this movie, it has like a Halloween festival. It's talking about a Smashing Pumpkins concert. There's a vampire involved. It's funny, and I feel like it's very, I feel like the actors and the writing isn't like corny, which I think sometimes when you look back at some of these films, you're just like, it's kind of corny, and I get that this was made for kids and everything. I don't feel that when I watch this one, especially when you get to the end. Quick synopsis: 2 kids, they're teenagers, and they want to go out for the night. Their mom, who is recently divorced, which, come on now, y'all are like wildin'. She won't go out. She's grounded them. She won't allow them to really go out because she wants to spend time with them. They have dates to go to, so they end up getting a date for her in the ads, which is wild. Turns out her date's actually a vampire. And now they have to spend the entire time trying to save her so that he doesn't kill her and suck all of her blood. That's how they spend the rest of the night. Like, the dad from Lizzie McGuire is in it. The Aunt Hilda is in this. It's just really good, and I think that the writing's like still pretty great, and even the ending I think is pretty funny. So give it a watch if you haven't yet. I feel like a lot of people have not watched this film, and it's actually like a really good one. And of course, you can't have a Disney Channel Halloween Trinity without including Hocus Pocus. Honestly, I don't even think I need to have a synopsis for this one at this point. Almost everybody can agree that this is the quintessential Halloween movie. If it's not Hocus Pocus, then I really don't know what you're watching every year, to be honest. But I felt like it would be a sin if I didn't include it in this list of recommendations. Hocus Pocus, always and forever. Those are my Halloween holy trinities as far as Disney's concerned. going into the cozy fall film recommendations. This is if you don't want any of that Halloween spooky storyline. You want all fall vibes, all cozy vibes. These will be for you.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
First of my recommendations is Good Will Hunting. Now, Good Will Hunting takes place in the fall, and that's why it feels very fall-like, but also there is something about Robin Williams that makes you feel like fall and cozy. Mrs. Doubtfire almost made this list, even though none of it takes place during the fall, and I think it really just had to do with like the cozy vibes that it kind of gives. Good Will Hunting, I feel like, gives cozy fall vibes, and I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that it all takes place, or majority, takes place at a school, and something about back to school says it's now fall. But essentially, Matt Damon is a genius. No one realizes that he's a genius. He is a mathematical genius. He is like a janitor at Harvard, and he ends up solving this big equation that nobody else in their classes can solve, but he can. And it kind of goes on from there on like ideas of therapy and why he doesn't really apply himself even though he's a genius. It's a great story. If you've not watched it, watch it because it's some of the great Robin Williams stories. I had 2 Tim Curry films on here. One of those was Clue, which I don't think is as much love as Rocky Horror, but is just as important a film. Clue is based off the game Clue, essentially. Everybody shows up for dinner, somebody, Mr. Body, ends up dead, and problems and hilarity ensue. It's hilarious, it's corny, it's campy, it's wonderful. It's a great time. Me and my partner watch it every year to really feel in like the fall spirit because it's just really good and it's just funny. It's hilarious. Tim Curry, it plays the butler and it's great. And at the end you have like 3 or 4 random like endings that you could choose from. That's, I think it was like the first like try at like pick your own adventure type of film. So really, I don't think enough people watch Clue. I don't think enough people know about Clue. It is a great film, and if you really want fall vibes, I suggest you try this one out. So one of my second to last recommendations for cozy fall season is The Princess Bride. And I think it's left out of a lot of fall like list for movies. I don't know why. When I first even brought it up like to my partner that this was in my list, he kind of was like, I feel like that's a summer movie. And then I had to remind him about it. He had to watch a couple of clips and he was like, no, I think you're right. This is definitely fall. It's got Andre the Giant in it, which is, he plays an amazing character. There's so many good one-liners in it. The story is great. I love The Princess Bride. I think it's fall vibes. It's something that I may not watch every year for Halloween or fall season, but when I do, I get reminded like I should do this every season. So this is also kind of in here to remind me, you need to watch The Princess Bride this season. So try and watch this if you want cozy vibes. It's a fairy tale. It has to do with a like Robin Hood character and him losing his love and his love thinking that she has lost him, and he comes back and before she marries some prince and he sweeps her off her feet, but the prince finds out and wants him killed. And yeah, that's pretty much the synopsis of it. It's probably the funnier films that I've seen of like a time period movie. So try and watch The Princess Bride this season. I definitely feel like it's a cozy film to watch for your fall. Another fall movie that is great is You've Got Mail with Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks, and, surprise, Dave Chappelle. I still don't know how he got that role, but I also love that he's in this movie with them. It feels like fall, I think, because of all the books. And fall and books just go hand in hand. 2 people essentially fall in love over AOL email. Yes, I know, extremely dated, but it's nostalgic. I love it. It's cozy. What they don't know is that they're actually rivals in real life. And it's about like a small bookstore trying to overcome a big bookstore. It's really cozy vibes. It's absolutely cozy vibes, especially if you're a reader. Because, I mean, this is kind of the love story for every reader out there. My very last movie recommendation actually doesn't fit into one singular category, but in my opinion, all three. And that's The Haunted Mansion, the one with Eddie Murphy, not the new one. I still have to watch the new one, and I've heard that it's alright. It's on Disney Plus now, so I think I'm gonna check it out now. But I just don't think it'll rival Eddie Murphy's version. This one was, I watch it every single year, and it still lives up to the laughs. It's still funny. Eddie Murphy's just hilarious in this film, and somehow it's the perfect combination of spooky, Halloweeny, and cozy. And I know it's like a weird to say that that's cozy, but it's cozy in like this nostalgic way. And of course the Halloween comes from the ghosts and all of that, and then the spooky. The ending where like the butler gets dragged to hell, like that's pretty scary. Like, I remember as a child, like they kind of went in on that for it to be a kids movie. So I chose this as my overarching all three movie, and that's Haunted Mansion. Like I said, I still gotta watch the new one. We'll see if it lives up to the hype. Okay, I've done a ton of talking about movies and shows. I have given you guys a long list of movies and shows to work off of. And now I'm going to give you just a couple of books for you to read, because nothing is better during the fall than I feel like reading. So I'm going to give you a couple of reads that you should look out for whatever type of season you're trying to conjure up this fall. But let's head over to my library corner for me to pick out some of those books. Okay, so we're almost through all of my recs and everything, but now, of course, it wouldn't be a Kill Sweetie recommendation for the fall if I didn't include books. So I have 4 books. 4 books per season, because I can't get more than that a month personally, for whatever type of season you would like this fall. The first recommendation I have for this Halloween, if you're going for a Halloween season, my recommendation for you is Interview with a Vampire. It's the story of a vampire and his changing, as well as his relationship with the vampire who changed him over like decades, centuries, all of that. It's by Anne Rice, which it also is lauded as, again, queer as hell. Like, if you read it, you know. Anne Rice's Interview with a Vampire is a banned book, and in many different states, because of its content. But I think while it is a longer read, it definitely is giving Victorian old school vampire. So if you want something that is Dracula without being Dracula, I recommend you go and read that for a try. It did take me a while to read through it, but I also read it because I love the movie with Brad Pitt. I mean, once I got to the end, my heart just felt so full for both of these characters. So I recommend that. I know that's a heavy read to start off with for the Halloween season, but I think it is Halloween, like, in its Victorian vampire aesthetic. Another one I recommend for the Halloween season is probably not one that people would usually recommend, and that's Bunny. I feel like by Mona Awad. It's either a favorite or you hate it. I had DNF'd it. I gotten through maybe like 40 to 60% of the book, and then I was just like, it's too much world building, I'm gonna DNF it. If you're reading it for the first time, please just keep reading, because once you hit that halfway point, it just goes. It's so, and like the build of it is so good. I once described it as Mean Girls meets the Heathers meets the Craft. It's like all of those aesthetics. I've made the recommendation to a couple of people, and since then almost everybody I've recommended it to has absolutely loved it. They've even said that it's their favorite book of the year. So I do recommend giving it a try. The basis of it has to do with our main character, who is currently in a master's writing program, and she knows about these 3 other girls in her class, and they call themselves Bunny all the time. So, and they have this writing salon, and something very strange happens at these salons. So I will only say that. I will say, if you've watched Rocky Horror, then you basically have the premise of the weirdness that happens at the salons. It's cryptic if you have not seen Rocky Horror, but also maybe that'll push you to go see Rocky Horror, because everybody should watch it. Another Halloween favorite of mine is, again, one that I actually read earlier this year, and that was Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. For years, I have been seeing Darlene Dessy recommend Agatha Christie books for the fall, and I'm like, ugh, I'm not a big fan of older horror novels. Like even a Haunting on Hill House, I read the original. I mean, the show on Netflix scared the mess out of me. I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. But then I was like, oh, I should read the book. It's supposed to be the original. Like, you know, this is supposed to be like the godmother of horror and everything. Well, there were parts of it that were a little unsettling. It just wasn't giving as scary as I thought it would be. And maybe that was the audiobook, but it just, something about it wasn't as unsettling as I thought it would be. And so I figured that with Agatha Christie as well, considering she's the mother of mystery. And I take that back. It was wonderful. And There Were None. If you're going to start an Agatha Christie novel, start with And There Were None. It's really good. If you're ever wondering and you've seen Knives Out, as I recommended earlier, and you love that film, you'll love this book. This is where that trope even came from in the first place. It has to do with a murder mystery. 10 people go to an island that they have stated somebody has invited them to, and 9 people end up not leaving. So, and you have to figure out who it is by the end who did it. I think like I had almost figured it out by the time we maybe got down to like the 3rd person on the island. And I was close. I didn't even have it all the way, but I was really close. So I recommend that. It's pretty easy to read and not that long. So if you want to get in the Halloween spirit with a murder mystery, I recommend a good Agatha Christie novel. My last novel for a recommendation for the Halloween season, and for something that is also still in that mystery type of place, but is not spooky enough to be a horror or spooky, and not cozy for sure to be in the cozy fall genre, is Not So Perfect Strangers. I recently read this earlier this year, and I feel like more people need to read it. It was just so great. It has to do with 2 characters, one being black and one being white women, who are both in abusive relationships of some kind. Our main protagonist, who is a black woman, is currently trying to leave her abusive husband. They both live in DC, and as she's trying to leave him, she actually runs into Madison, our white protagonist, and she thinks that she's running from her husband, so she ends up helping her. And later on, Madison comes up with a plan so that both of them do not have to deal with their abusive marriages anymore. But Tasha, our main protagonist, isn't really down with the plan. And Maddie feels like she just needs a little push. But I really feel like the Indian threw me for a loop, and I don't feel like it was far-fetched. Really a great book if you're looking for like a murder, thriller, mystery. Okay, I'm going to start with cozy books because I feel like my cozy books might be a letdown for some of you, but I feel like, again, the theme of this video is cozy is a feeling, not a season. So my recommendations really have to do, again, with that feeling of nostalgia or warmth or support, like these things that are like, oh, I have a warm blanket and a warm coffee in my hand. Like, this is what I'm trying to emulate in my books. The reason also that I went down this path as far as like cozy recommendations is because I have tried reading the cozy low stakes genre, and although I love the movies of that sort of genre, I cannot get into the books of it. I tried last year or year before last, I tried reading Payback's a Witch, which Book Talk was just over the moon about. Like, they were just talking about it everywhere, about the queer representation and how it was written. I'm gonna be honest with you, it was a hard read. I finished it just to finish it. I mean, I've tried to read, like, I finished Practical Magic as well last year. It just doesn't, this is one of the situations where the movie actually is better than the book in my opinion. The book wasn't bad, it just is not the movie. And the movie is so good that if you go into the book thinking you're getting the movie, I think you're going to be disappointed. And even when I tried to read Magic Lessons, also by Alice Hoffman, which is supposed to be like a prequel to Practical Magic, I had to DNF it. It was too historical. It felt too low stakes, way too low stakes, and I just couldn't finish it. Even Under the Whispering Door. I think Under the Whispering Door would be one of the big ones that I would recommend here. But I'm gonna be honest, I didn't enjoy Under the Whispering Door. I'm just not a low stakes girly, and books that are all vibes, no plot, are hit or miss. All of these books are considered cozy genre, so if anything, maybe take these conversations as recommendations. I just can't recommend them because I myself didn't give them the 5-star rating because I personally did not care for them. Now, with that being said, here are some books that I did care for and gave me a cozy fall feeling in my opinion. First off is Their Eyes Were Watching God. I know somebody out there is going to be like, that is not a fall book. And while, yes, you are true, no part of this book really takes place in the fall, I think that the conversation of Janie falling in love with these men and finding herself, and just the way that Zora Neale Hurston writes feels cozy. And that's what I feel like when I read Their Eyes Are Watching God. It is about Janie, who has just become, her husband has just passed. She was married off extremely young, and she finds another man who she gets married to. He ends up being the mayor of an incorporated town. He also ends up being abusive and not a great husband whatsoever. He ends up passing as well. She ends up meeting Tea Cake. Tea Cake ends up being the love of her life, even though she's much older than him. And they end up falling in love in the story of them, but unfortunately it also ends tragically. I really love the book because although the plot of it is about Janie falling in love with these men, it's actually about her falling in love with herself through the history of these men and finding herself. Another book that I would recommend that is that cozy nostalgic feeling is Where the Heart Is by Billy Letts, about Novalee Nation, who has gotten pregnant at 16, and her boyfriend who got her pregnant leaves her at a Walmart. She has nowhere else to go, no money in her pocket, so she ends up staying at the Walmart and actually having the baby at the Walmart. After like a month or so goes by, she's been living there, and by having the Walmart baby, she ends up in that small town, and the owner of Walmart actually ends up giving her money, and that's kind of how it all starts. But really, a lot of the book has to do with her and her daughter's relationship to the community that she becomes adopted to through all of this, and just the idea that a lot of bad things may happen to her, but on the other side of them, because of the support that she has from her friends, from her found family, it's really the importance of found family. And I think that that's what kind of makes it a very fall-like cozy book, because I feel like it's the idea of family and friends and how much they mean to you and help you through everything. My last cozy fall book recommendation is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And again, I think there will be people out there who will be like, that's not a cozy fall book. I think you are correct. It takes place over many years and many seasons, but I believe that because it starts off in the fall and it's such a like literary, like intelligent book, it makes me feel like back to school and like learning, and I associate that with fall. So I know that that may be a reach for some people, so please take it with a grain of salt. That's why I kind of sandwiched it between two, like, oh, these are definitely recommendations. But Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is another book talk book that just took off at the beginning of this year, is about three friends and the kind of conversation of love and friendship and a love triangle amongst these three friends and what happens to them over 3 decades. One of the main characters is chronically ill and is in love with another character, although he has issues with expressing that love. One of the other protagonists, who's a woman, also has her own issues, her own set of baggage as well, but is also not necessarily in love with the friend who is in love with her. And then there's the last protagonist, who seems to be the glue for the two of them. I really loved it. Like, you know, at first you do kind of have to get your mind around like all the intelligent language, because they are very smart and they are gamers. So they are talking a lot about coding and stuff like that. But after you kind of start to get a rhythm with it, it does get more approachable. And I love how it's really not just a love story romantically, but more so speaking of love and relationships in all of their forms, like romantically, platonically, even like people you hate. That's a relationship in and of itself. It was worth the hype. It was worth the hype. It's a book talk book and it was worth the hype. I gave it 5 stars, and it's a cozy book read for me in the conversation of love and relationships, which I think is kind of the all-around theme for all the books that I've recommended, is a conversation of family and love and relationships, because I think I'm thinking of like Thanksgiving. Okay, for spooky, I have spooky recommendations like crazy. I actually have 2 shelves of spooky recommendations because I read so much spooky. This shelf even down here, it's not spooky, it's science fiction, but even that can be considered spooky because of what that entails. So I definitely have tons of recommendations. I think throughout like the rest of the season coming up, look out for more book reviews, because I really think that if you're looking for a spooky reading season, you've come to the right place. You will get that throughout the entire season, especially in the next 2 months or so. Let's end on a high note with those recommendations, because I know that those are strong. My first recommendation is the Final Girl Support Group. Now, I will preface that with saying I would technically recommend any Grady Hendrix book. I am a huge fan of Grady Hendrix. I know that you either love him or you hate him. I personally, as you've noticed a trend of, love a side of politics with my horror and thriller. And Grady Hendrix, I feel like, does an amazing job of that, whether it's talking about ageism or sexism or racism or issues within a decade. Any Grady Hendrix book honestly would probably do. It would meet the brief. As far as Halloween books are concerned, I think that you should definitely pick up a Grady Hendrix books this season. It will definitely get you in the spooky season mood. My next 2 book recommendations are shorter books, and I love shorter books that pack a punch. One of those first shorter books is Ring Shout. I picked up Ring Shout about a year ago now in Seattle, and I picked it up because I'd seen the cover a couple of times, and the cover is, oh, it's amazing. It is a great cover. Shout out to the illustrator or graphic designer who made this cover, because it really is just so good in my opinion. It is, I think, 150 pages, and the synopsis of it has to do with, it is the Jim Crow era, and the main character is a black woman who fights aliens from a different dimension, a hell dimension, that actually look like Ku Klux Klan members. That should be enough for, if you are into race theory, historical horror, that should be enough for you to pick up the book. That was enough for me personally. I was like, that sounds amazing. It's sci-fi and it's horror and historical and it's race theory and politics all in one, and it definitely did not disappoint. It packed a huge punch. It really, really is just a great read. If I could recommend that book, which I do recommend that book to everyone, I would, because I just feel like it attacks the conversation of race, not like cavalier in order to like make a sci-fi, but in a way that's very realistic, and in a way that you're almost kind of like, And that's the only explanation for why anybody in this world could be that evil. I think that there's a great conversation there about the concept of a lack of empathy and approaching it from a place of like actual real monsters from another dimension and sci-fi monsters and the monsters that are human and live in our world. So Ring Shout, I think, is a great horror. I want to say sci-fi because of the monsters in it, but I don't even know if that's right. But like the horror thriller historical elements, I think if you're looking for a spooky read, try that out. It's also a quick read, so you got nothing to lose on it. The other book that I would recommend is This Thing Between Us. It's another novella, and it messed me up. It has to do, our main character is Latino in Chicago, and he and his wife moved into a gentrified condo in downtown. What things start kind of happening weird with their like they call it something special, but it's essentially an Alexa. And she starts ordering weird things like lye or knives or trash bags, like things that are like, why are you ordering things that are for a murder? Or turning on noises that shouldn't be on in the middle of the night. Like, it's just these weird things that make you think that the Alexa might be possessed. Because I know people like to hear about this. While I personally don't find the need to know about it, regardless that, you know, I do love animals, I do know some people love to hear about it, so I just want to put that out there. There is a very visceral scene with the dog, and the dog does die. Just have to point that out. I think it messed me up a lot because it's a very depressing novel, to be honest. So if you, like, it really tackles the conversation of grief, and and how to not handle grief well, like just horribly, and now throw in some supernatural demonic elements into that, and now you've reached where our main character ends up. I do recommend This Thing Between Us if you're looking for a very spooky read, but short on time. My last recommendation for a spooky read this year is A Certain Hunger. It blew me away. I'm gonna give you a synopsis, and honestly, I think the synopsis alone really sells the book. This book is a fake memoir written from our main character from jail, where she is convicted of a quadruple homicide and cannibalism. I would also like to note that our main character used to be a well-renowned food critic. It sells the book. It really sells the book. Yeah, she basically walks through all of her murders, how she did them, how they happened. They all were romantic encounters and exes, and even why she ended up eating them and how she ate them. I think that it was interesting because she's definitely a sociopath, and there's such a removal from the murders that you start kind of catching yourself reading it like she is talking about just regular food. Especially there's a portion where she starts talking about kosher. I learned so much about kosher meat from this chapter, which is unsettling, but I also have such a respect for people who only eat kosher meat or prepare kosher meat. The writing really takes you there, and I think it's perfect if you want a man-eating heroine that none of us asked for. Now, is she a horrible character? Do you even like her at all? No. She is not likable whatsoever. If hearing that a food critic is writing her memoir from jail after being convicted of homicide and cannibalism isn't enough to sell you on the book, I just don't think the book's for you. So my very last recommendation is a book that doesn't necessarily fit into any one of the 3 categories, but I feel like it's a good recommendation for the fall season, the spooky season, the Halloween season, and that's It Came from the Closet. These are queer essays about the horror genre of movies, and I read it earlier this year and I gave it 5 stars. It is a hard read, I will preface that, but I do feel like it's a necessary read. All of these essays come from the point of view and the investigation of specific horror movies through the lens of queerness and the queer experience. And I had to take my time reading it because I listened to the audiobook, and there are some essays that are full of rage and hurt and just depression. So it is not a quick read. These essays definitely come from the heart. They are hard to read, but I also think that they are extremely important to read, and that's why I really want to make sure that I recommend it to you this fall season, because I feel like everyone should pick up this book just to learn. Also, to learn how queer horror movies are. So I would just like to make that recommendation. That is my last book recommendation. So let's get into the outro for all of these recommendations I just gave y'all. So that's it. I have given so much content. Honestly, these should probably be cut up into 3 different videos. I am positive of it. I'm even like sitting here like I need water. I've also am heating up underneath these sweaters trying to create the vibe. But I really hope that my recommendations hit home. I know some of them were classics, ones that like people watch every single year, but I also hope that you found something new, whether it was in another category that you might not have thought yourself in. I just hope that with all the recommendations I gave you, you will find something to add to your rotation this year, whether that was a movie or show or book. All of these things that I have recommended are a part of my rotation every year because I myself do not fit into any specific category, but all 3 of them, depending on what day you talk to me, what time of the day it is. If you are somebody like that, then I basically just gave you, what, 21 movies, essentially like 12 shows, and 13 books to like read. That's a lot of content. I just basically like sewed up your spooky season all in one video. So I hope you guys liked it. I know this was a long one, but let me know if anything rung true for you, if there was anything new that you found from this video, if there was anything that you were just like, that is my favorite spooky fall season rec as well. I always have to watch or read or anything of that every year. I love to also find out about new movies and films that I should be watching because I feel like I've had the same ones on rotation for a while now. I think Buffy is one of the new ones that I've ever like actually watched and is new to the rotation. So if you guys have any recommendations for me, please share them in the comments below. I will be doing spooky season content for all of October, but pretty much now until the end of October. So if you really want some spooky season inspiration or things to do or activities, crafts, thrifting, you just want the vibes, please subscribe because that is all I will be giving you for the next month and a half. Well, thank you for watching if you made it this far. I appreciate you. Alright guys, bye.